Sometimes. Right now, let me know what.
Yeah, sorry.
She didn't do anything. It's not even. Yeah, it's almost like. Yeah. So, like they don't have. That's a lot more houses. I'm trying to get it. Oh, sending. Okay, well, that's good. To get. Estimation, that's just going to take. Yep. All right, well, I'm waiting on call the budget work session to order. Watching the workout. And I got works. Yeah, exactly.
Thinking of a net.
Budget work session has begun. All right, Paige, I'll let you do this.
Thank you all. I don't anticipate this meeting going long. I'll give you a brief budget update. We'll talk about where we are in this process. I need a little bit of direction from you guys today. We'll talk about the change in our replacement schedule, and then we will do the non-budget priorities session. So we've got lunch ordered we got Ingles chicken salad, so we have that, but I anticipate being out of here early. Okay, so this is early in the process for the board receiving these expenditure and revenues. When you get the draft budget, it'll have all of the detail as well as the amended and original difference. But this is just to give you a synopsis of where we are at this point. So you see what's estimated in the proposed upcoming budget in the first column. And then the second column is our current 22-23 budget. And then you see the difference. So you've got revenues on one and expenditures on the other, and that's in the gray title of it. Basically, we're balanced right now. With this budget is balanced with a 1 cent tax increase for the Main Street director position, which is the direction that I want to get from you today. The main change in this is, so as we talked about in our first work session, we're losing revenue around 20,000 from the 107 corridor widening and stuff that's been purchased, parcels that have been purchased already. The change in the budget is pretty much the difference in the fire department. We're proposing a 3% combined COLA and merit increase. And then there are a lot of changes in the cost of items. Things are just more expensive. But so the main reason we were able to balance this budget is the ABC revenue. We're going to receive an additional $160,000. So we're able to find that out early this year. So we've budgeted for that, whereas in the past, we haven't known this early, and that's been something that we have not counted on to balance the budget. So we would have been talking about a 4 cent tax increase to accommodate for that, and 5 cents, including the ABC, the shortfall, and then the Main Street director. But I wanted you to see where we are at this point. So what you have next is the additional duties that would go with the Main Street Economic Development job description. And if you don't mind looking over those, and then this handout here, Amanda has prepared, and it shows the impact of a 1 cent tax increase on both revenue or on additional revenue for commercial and residential. And you see the range down here in blue. So a 1 cent tax increase with residential parcels ranging from $120 to almost 3 million. The average parcel increase would be $19 for the year. Commercial, the parcel value ranges from $500 to 30 million. And 1 cent tax increase would cost the average commercial property owner $75 a year. So I'll give you all a couple minutes to gaze over this. When we go through our budget work session at the draft, we'll get into details on these increases. But I wanted you to just see how we balanced at this point.
And I just want, so when we did our budget, our stickers, so this was the number one thing.
Yes.
Okay, just wanted to, just make sure that was clear. This is.
And I'm going
we
to
all
post
put
that
lots
sheet
of
out in the
emphasis on.
next,
Okay,
in the next part of this work session, unless you all want it now.
I want to tap on what you just said.
sure.
The last 2 years with COVID, it was very obvious who put what dots down because it was done Zoom. So everyone was accounted for. And I did go back and look at where the dots came from, and they primarily came from one board member's stickers. So I would like to see kind of a general consensus from us, if we're all in agreement on that, or if that was just one set of stickers.
What I want to get out of this is, are you okay with balancing this budget with 1 cent tax increase to make the Main Street director full-time? Because we need to know that going forward in the budget process.
And we
and again-
also need to see that it's majority.
Yeah, but also that's not just making the Main Street director full-time. It's actually changing what the Main Street director does.
Yes,
It's
so
much
this-
more an economic development director rather than just a Main Street director.
Right.
Because I think those are different.
Right, so it's an expansion of that role. So this document here, which we've just gotten, but if you look down at, this is, Burns, you've been primarily focused on downtown business district, and this is very much an expansion outside of that to include all of Sylva and help more with administrative tasks. And it's very timely because, like you were discussing, Mary, with 107 impact, is starting to come to fruition now. This expands, town staff's ability to address issues all the way down 107. And if you look down through this list, you'll see that is definitely made a priority in the expansion of this role.
Right.
So, yes, at the initial budget discussion, the vote was expanding the Main Street director position to full-time. But now at this point, we know a lot more about what we want that role to look like. And we've had input from board members on sort of what sort of things we want that role to fill, like you suggested, grant writing positions, things like that. So I would take a minute and read through this list and see if these are what you think would be valuable roles to fill that, our current level of staffing can't fill. And especially with the increasing needs from 107 coming. Because it might have a different perspective when you put those stickers on there.
Yeah, and I mean, work that needs to be done that without this position won't be done. I think that's something to keep in mind too.
And Vern, I want to be clear, I think you do a great job.
Oh, no,
I do, and I did speak to other professionals in the economic development role in Jackson County. And they did tell me that you speak to a different lane, so to speak. You do a lot of wonderful things for Sylva, so I want to make sure you know that.
What are stickers?
Oh, yeah. You didn't watch our last budget. You didn't watch our last.
She's doing great on the board.
Do we get free stickers?
We do get free stickers.
Yeah.
I'm gonna report that back home today for sure.
So when we do our budget priorities planning work session, the one that we have in January, the board and staff both outline needs and wants for the upcoming budget. And then we estimate costs, and then the board gets a sheet of probably 20 stickers and then place their stickers on those items to prioritize them. I'll go ahead.
Meaning that's a board member's way of saying these are expenses that I, at this point in the process, generally support.
Right.
Just kind of saying
Oh,
that.
usually this is what I like more than this, like you put more stickers and you like that more.
Oh, you put
Yeah.
more, okay.
Yeah, you can put all your
I'm
stickers.
sure I'll figure out the process of how many stickers you're gonna wear, but I didn't even know what stickers.
Like Mary pointed out, it's an imperfect process. It's a good way for staff to gauge, the board's priorities, but there can be a situation where, one board member puts a lot of stickers on something and nobody else does. Although that's rare. I think just about everyone put a sticker.
Oh, the
Yeah.
concern was if somebody put 5 of their stickers on something, and no one else put any, you would get a weight.
20 on the
Right.
skate park, but
So-
that's not the true emphasis.
So we don't base our budget decisions off of that
No,
list, but it helps guide
Yeah,
staff. I guess.
If it gets something gets no stickers, then we
Then we
kind of
know.
move on. Right.
Yeah.
So you see the votes, those are essentially stickers.
Ah, okay, now I get it completely.
Okay, so while the rest of the board reads through this list, it is a very important list to read through. I just have a couple of questions on expenditures and revenues thing.
Yep.
So we lost 20-something K in property tax revenue, 107 losses, but we still net gained 41 K in property tax revenue. Was that with the 1 cent increase, these projected revenues?
It's the 1 cent equates to 48.
Okay, so this is including
Yes,
that. Okay.
so it did go down on the real property.
Okay.
As well as business or personal property. We
Mhm.
decreased that some as well. But yes, the gain is in that. It's
So-
mainly the ones.
And then you said 3% COLA and combined merit increase. What percentage of that is COLA? That's just.
Not broken that out yet.
Okay. But when you budget for that, you just, how do you just assume across the board 3%?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm waiting to see what the trend other places are doing before determining that.
Yeah.
It's low for the COLA, based off the Bureau of Labor Statistics, CPI, but at this point, it just comes down to what we can afford.
So how much is 1% COLA increase in dollars?
My guess would be 20,000. Do you know that off the top of your head, Amanda?
No, but I can do it to you. Just
That would be rough, like, $2 million. No. It would be what's our overall salary budget? Is it around 2 million?
We look at it by department.
So our overall is 1.8.
1.8. 1 cent.
So we.
So at one point, we were discussing a position for Public Works that was sort of the liaison for the 107. Is this maybe taking the place of that concept plus more?
Yes, for sure, plus more. That was an estimated annual cost of $5,000. And that was, it's been several years since we discussed that.
It's supposed to be more of a temporary consulting type position.
Right.
Right.
I think that was maybe 4 years ago.
Early stages.
So personally, for me, I can't imagine a better benefit to the town of Sylva that would only cost the average residential user $1.56 a month than to add this position, especially at this time. We know that, with all the projects we have going on and the upcoming 107 tasks that we're understaffed in the administration, I think, and I think this job description is exactly what I think we need to be focusing on and working on. So I'm strongly in favor of us doing this 1 cent. And I think it's very impressive that you managed to budget or balance this budget with and add this position with only a 1 cent increase. I think that shows a very efficient use of town funds.
And I think the one thing Bernadette has a lot of strong points that she's brought to this position. I think one of the strongest is communication with merchants. That's something that's needed to improve for a long time. And I think expanding that to commercial areas beyond downtown will really help what businesses get for what they pay in taxes. But I also want to say, like, from the extra administrative standpoint, Bernadette has been a tremendous help, and we've added employees in fire, police, and public works over the past few years. I mean, truthfully, we've added a third of our staff in the past since 2021, which is huge. And every time we're adding personnel, we need to be having a permanent funding source to accommodate for that. But when we're short-staffed in the office, Bernadette has been amazing to help fill in for the three of us and answering the phones, taking payments at the window, and helping customers as they come in the door. So that, I don't have that in here, but that is another benefit to having another set of hands.
It's been a goal of ours for a long time. Yeah. I wholeheartedly support.
So do you need a consensus from all board members?
I think so. Let's go around and hear everybody's thoughts on it, or if there are other things that you think need to be addressed in this time.
Well, start with you.
Well, this is exactly what I asked for last year, like job description of how we want this thing to look, and this, I haven't read the whole thing yet, but it looked in there, you said, I'll consider here, sure about the dots. The picture of the projected. Oh, I'm sorry, there's a couple things that have the same amount of dots, you know, I think the wellness app is a great idea, I still think that's a great idea, but yeah, overall, for this year, yes, let's go ahead. Check.
Okay.
I'm down for it. I think if I had to guess, I bet Bernadette's already putting full-time hours and brain power into the position already, just seeing that all that she's done, that she's been our part-time MSSA person. And so, yeah.
That's a very good point. She's definitely putting more than 20 hours in a week. And that's because of our commitment to the town and to our businesses. Thank you.
I like this job description, and I like what it's bringing to the entire commercial aspect of Sylva. I'm going to say 10, 12 years ago, trash and recycling was done away with in commercial businesses. And sometimes I think that commercial taxpayers in Sylva don't have representation or get fair representation to residents. And I think this could help mend that relationship or mend that gap. You had mentioned something, and I'm drawing a blank on it right now, social media. It's probably in here, but increasing social media communication for commercial would be a strong suit. I'm coming around to the idea, but 5 minutes of time isn't enough time for me to digest it. I'm coming around to it. So.
Well, I have a question. These are all pretty important things. Also a pretty diverse list of things, but you mentioned administrative duties that Vern's already jumping in on. What is the expectation for administrative duties versus this list? Because these are not administrative duties.
So the top two, well, the top one for sure will take off of administrative duties,
So
but the only, what administration is currently doing. The only other expectation would be that she fills in when necessary. Like if we're with phone calls and people coming in the front door. So that expectation would be to help out. The same as, if Jake or Chris walk through town hall and we're both on the phone and somebody walks in the door, we don't want to leave somebody waiting.
what's the frequency of that? By the way, the reason why I'm asking is sometimes at my work, we create really cool new positions with nice lists like this. And then when the admin duties become overwhelming, a year later, we can look back and say this list isn't getting done very much. The person's supporting admitting it. That's where my head's at for asking that question, because it's a risk that you run with lofty goals and then somebody just winds up standing by the door answering the phone.
I don't think that would happen. It would be seldom.
I'm not here, hardly, so I have no idea if that's once a week or.
We
all day
really
long.
tried a time where only one of us is out at a time. And certain times of the year are busier than others. I mean, when we're taking tax payments and bringing up the mountains, which falls under Bernadette also. So it would be very seldom that she would fill in on administrative duties. But having one person to be the central contact when somebody is starting a business will really help.
Yeah, I can see that for sure, just as a comment, having a place to go, because I was looking at this list trying to figure out who does it now. It's
So,
like everybody, right? I mean, it's kind of a group effort.
so when someone comes in, whoever they talk to is the first point of contact. But it's Amanda that's doing the business registration and the ABC billing.
Any other comments, questions?
Yes.
Oh,
It's my turn.
Okay, it's turn one.
It's my
Yeah,
turn.
as far as I'm concerned. it's your
Yeah.
turn.
No, so I was thinking like fall back on mission statement to provide efficient, high quality services, encourage partnerships and proactively plan for the future to meet changing needs. Sounds like it's exactly what this position addresses, like this list of things to do. So, if we want to stay true to our mission here, I think this is exactly what the town needs.
I'd point out too, that you're not making an outside hire and having to make those guesses about qualifications and will this person be a good fit? You know very, very well that this person's gonna be a good fit. That's not often something you get when you create a new position. Too, so.
May I say one more thing?
Yes.
Did I use that? I mean, yes,
Okay.
yes.
I just want to ask, the ABC income is a variable. It's not a guarantee every year. So have you thought about future years, or are you looking at this as just like a trial run 1 year?
No, I'm not looking at it as a trial run. That's more of a question for staff of the ABC revenue because they're more.
Okay, so the 1 cent tax increase would take care of her position.
Moving forward.
Yes. But the ABC revenue, that is something we need to think about. I mean, building it into our budget means we're counting on it going forward, or we're counting on having to come up with that shortfall. We have got historically more than we have budgeted for. We typically budget for $160,000, which is our, that's in how we're set up when we merged with the county. But their revenue stream has been higher and they've been distributing more for several years, so.
That contractual agreement, 150 or 160, whatever you said it was, probably could be revisited since it was made so long ago and the revenues are always higher, but.
Well, and it's 60% for the county, 40% for the town, with a guarantee that we receive 60,000. So I don't know that we need to review it. We've got the 40%. Yeah.
There, yeah.
But
Being able to-
yes, it is counting on that money in our budget.
And you're probably going to go over where I know it's right in front of us, but are we going to go over where the shortfalls were, where that 160 is?
We'll do that in our next work session.
And to be clear, Brad, like this is, so what we're giving consensus to is that we support the position and for staff to move forward with preparing it in the budget, but that doesn't pass until we adopt the budget. We're saying yes to something.
And Mary, the reason I'm going to wait on that is because we're so early in this process. And when we normally look at this, you've got the amendment and original, and we've got some numbers that we just want to need to finalize.
Pretty high number on the interest on investments also. That's
Say it again.
of the interest on investments. Revenue side, $37,000 per estimated at $60,000 on.
Well,
Understand.
that's better interest rates.
Doing something different there or?
It's just the economy, the rates have gone up and that's actually very conservative because we are seeing quite a bit more than what was budgeted. But as we discussed before, recession possibly out there coming and stuff, so I'm still being conservative on that. But the rates are well.
It sounds like you have consensus to move forward with adding full-time position or preparing the budget with that in mind at least.
Thank you all. That gives us direction. Okay, so the other change I want to mention on this budget is our capital replacement schedule. When we looked at implementing it about 2015, we were discussing patrol cars going out 7 to 9 years. Historically, they've needed to be replaced at 7 years. Our fleet is in better shape now. And then public works vehicles are around 10 and fire trucks vary, but 20 for large trucks. And then you're probably looking at 10 years on your smaller ones.
Yeah, that's probably all right.
So what we're proposing this year, Jake has looked into 7, 8, 9, and 10 years to see where we can save money. What I don't want to say problem is, but what's happened is when we put money back, if we are above where we need to be at year end, then if there are additional funds at a certain point, it rolls into capital reserve. The last few years, instead of putting money into capital reserve, we put it into Allen Street because we would need it. So we've had about 3 years where our surplus has gone into Allen Street instead of our capital replacement for vehicles. So that's lower than I would like for it to be. But when you come down to it, it's either for Allen Street, we're either taking it out of fund balance, or if we need vehicles, it's coming out of capital reserves, or it's coming out of fund balance if we don't have enough in the budget for it. So looking at this, Jake and I have talked about it, and we think going out 8 years is okay, due to the condition of our fleet, as long as we put in additional money for maintenance. And doing this, the best thing with it is we've got several years where at a 7-year replacement schedule, we looked at buying 3 patrol cars a year. And really, Sylva could afford to buy 1 or 2, but the 3 years would really hurt our budget and we'd feel the strain. So if we stretch this out to 8 years and put about another $10,000 in maintenance, we can avoid the years where we're having to buy 3 cars. So we need to make that change. But since we have the same person driving the car and we don't have cars that are running 24 hours, we feel comfortable that we can do that. Is there anything you want to add to that, Jake?
No, nothing too major. I will add, y'all have heard me whine about Dodge Chargers for several years at these meetings. Those cars have been discontinued and we're seeing a lot better life expectancy out of the SUVs that we've been purchasing for the last several years. So Ford Explorers and Dodge Durangos. The Durangos are new enough that we're not real sure how they're going to hold up, but the Explorers fleet wide, we're not seeing any major drivetrain issues in those until when you would expect to start seeing that 80, 100,000 miles as opposed to 25, 30,000 on some of the Chargers. Chargers have been discontinued. We couldn't get them anymore if we wanted to. And cutting out the year where we have to make a three car purchase, spreading that out, it's basically 2 a year from now till 2040, is how far we've gone out thus far with the schedule. that money can go back into the maintenance budget. We're probably gonna spend that money because we're gonna be putting more miles on these cars. And another year of idle hours. Idle hours are as hard on our police fleet as, or harder maybe even than actual miles. Yeah, we've done a lot of analysis on that, and I feel comfortable moving it to an 8-year placement schedule also.
So, oh yeah, go ahead.
So just to kind of, I keep talking about this, but it is coming when these things, especially with the F-150 already, the Lightning, when these cars when EVs start coming out and we're able to get them, it's going to completely change our maintenance because they don't need oil, they don't need spark plugs. Their idle time is like nothing because, there's actually not a motor running. So that is going to change stuff. I can't give you numbers right now because it's still a little bit in its infancy, but it's coming around. We talked about, you'd looked up how much that F-150 was. And do you remember how much those were?
Yeah, it went way up.
They did go up, but they'll come around, but I mean, I'm not saying don't do this or whatever, but like, this is something to keep on the radar because it is going to change our maintenance thing. It's going to be great, especially with these fleet vehicles. You charge them all night, just plug them in here, charge them all night and then drive them all day. And the police vehicles too, it'll really cut down with the idle time, but we're not quite there yet, but that will change probably how we go about procuring.
And when we get to a place where that's feasible economically, I'm happy to look at it.
Yeah, totally.
There's a lot of benefits.
Yeah.
So I go on gov deals all the time and look at what places around us are auctioning. And I noticed, I'm curious to hear what surrounding municipalities and counties replacement schedules are, because like right now, I think it's sold now, but we have a Charger on there with 87,000 miles on it only. And no one within 100 miles of us has a car with that low miles on it. They're all in the 120, 130,000 miles before they're auctioned off. And these are police vehicles. So like, is 8 years even too soon? 87,000 mile vehicles seems, even with high idle hours, it seems low.
The piece of the puzzle that I would want to know is how much money has been put back into that vehicle to get it to 120, 130,000.
It's a Charger.
Yeah.
You got a $4,000 cam that's had to be replaced.
Mhm.
$5,000 to $6,000 transmission has probably been replaced.
Yeah,
The
but,
cam and the transmission go out at about 80.
but these replacement vehicles are only 60,000.
I know we do in-house maintenance. We just do routine stuff, or if you got to pull transmission, do we do that?
We don't do major drivetrain.
Okay.
We do water pumps, we do front end work, that kind of thing. Suspension, chassis work, brakes. So above and beyond what you would call routine maintenance, but anything in the bottom end of the motor or in the transmission, we don't do.
All right, so if we're going to 7 to 8, saved us the 3 years of 3 in a row. So that seems at least sufficient for now.
And 9 and 10 years we looked at and they still had 3 years or 3 car years.
Okay,
So that was why we wanted to go with 8.
okay.
Well, it's always something you can reevaluate at the end of the first year also.
And looking at your fleet.
All right, well, yeah, I appreciate y'all doing the math on that.
The other thing I want to point out here on your revenues, the very last line in blue, the 58,500, this is what we would be appropriating from fund balance. This is to paint the town hall and the exterior of the town hall and public works building. And then we would roll over 35,000 in PAL bill funds to pave Second Avenue when the Mountain Projects homes are completed.
When painting like this, same thing, like same color. That brings up like this, like a mural on town hall would be pretty cool. It's a big, great spot in, canvas in the middle of town, something to kind of consider when we go about doing that.
I think if
Throwing it
you want to do it on the cheap though, get somebody with a sprayer and just finish it.
Yeah, I mean, the price we got was $23,500 for both facilities. That's washing, crack repair, bay door painting, coat of primer, 2 coats of paint. I certainly wouldn't do it for that.
Oh, I know, it's pretty
Start
good.
throwing-
No, and just on top of it, after, right, yeah, exactly. This wouldn't kind of have anything to do with
It's
this
easy, like
kind of thing.
initial step in the process of.
Yeah, exactly, but you gotta get a clean canvas to start
Yeah.
with, yeah.
And it's appropriate use of fund balance because of the time. I mean,
Yeah.
Even though I guess maintenance could be budgeted as recurring, but given the budget, it seems reasonable.
How often do we have to paint? When was the last time we did it?
It was either 2012 or 13. And it should be done every 10 years. I think it's 2012 because I mean, if you look at it from this direction, it's time to do it.
Oh, yeah.
Could be something we could play with the design of it, the colors and two-tone, paint the block a different color or.
It is a different color, isn't it?
Yeah. It's not really something I noticed, but I'll.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like I didn't notice it either. It's like you see it like your view.
I don't know.
If you have some ideas though, and it doesn't cost any more money, I just want to throw it out there to like.
That really simple thing on your building, it's that diagonal line and.
Yeah.
It's really a contrasting black, I think it looks really nice.
Thank you. Yeah, just the white building.
There's already-
It's definitely more.
All of these buildings are canvases for ideas. really.
Yeah.
You want them to be.
I know, Jake, you just wanted to paint it.
Starting with the paint job.
I worked tile five next to the wings.
In my living room.
Yeah.
Not with the second dynamic that happens in my house.
Ask a question, jump back to police vehicles for just a price. I don't know a lot about cars. This is probably a dumb question, but like, do they have warranties, like 100,000 or 10-year warranties on like drivetrain? Like, is that something that?
Yeah, they're generally 30,000 or 3-year
Oh,
drivetrain warranties.
And 30, hiring problems.
yeah, okay.
We do get some warranty work done there sometimes.
I have one, you can do 10 years, 100,000.
How many miles are we putting on a cruiser a year?
Yeah. What's that?
How many miles are we putting on a cruiser a year?
On a cruiser,
Or police vehicles?
10 to 12,000 miles generally per year on a patrol vehicle.
That's what I'm at. So 12,000, I'm say 84,000 miles and or I'm talking about an 8-year, almost 100,000 miles.
Like the vehicle that we were just talking about, the one that we just surplus.
Because it was unreliable or because?
Out.
Yeah.
And this was, it needed a lot of things. We'd have to put a pretty good amount of money in it to get it. It was just terrible.
Yeah, it had a long head, rear main seal. So
This is the Dodge.
Yeah. And time will tell on the Durangos. We have several Ford Explorers currently in the fleet. Both patrol vehicles and admin vehicles that are approaching 100,000 miles that haven't given us any substantial.
Dodge.
Ford, and we don't have any Dodges that have been in the fleet for more than 2 years. Currently. Durangos.
But yeah, we've got some Explorers.
Yeah.
We got an Explorer that are 100,000 miles.
Yeah.
And we're driving. No problem.
If we're talking brands, we've not had good luck with Dodge vehicles. We put a lot of miles on our vehicles and that's just been, it's kind of the consensus in our trades. Vehicles that get a lot of daily use, plus we put a lot of weight on them. I guess it's not an issue, but you talk to a lot of guys in our trades, they'll tell you, I wouldn't buy a Dodge again.
Well, in the dictionary, it says to avoid.
Our maintenance guy always.
But I said we bought them because they're cheap.
The cheapest.
They remain.
And our maintenance guy always says, I don't know why you bought this car. It said Dodge and all that.
Yeah.
What you buying?
I've never heard that. That's
We
funny.
recently bought an old police vehicle that's not recommended ever. Again, that was-
It's not like your personal car, they don't live the same.
No, it didn't. I was like, oh, it has low mileage and it was probably taken care of, but no, it's not.
So paid like $6,000 for, that's what I said, was that last, is that what it went for?
Completely beyond anything I can fathom. I wouldn't give you $500. I mean.
Y'all are not selling these to our future business.
Sorry.
We're ready to do
They've got great stories.
Sorry. I don't know the exact details on this, but I had a friend that worked over in Cherokee that said that, and I don't know if this is even something possible for Sylva, but I know that Cherokee, a lot of their vehicles come from grant money, like,
They gotta,
but it's maybe different for them. or-
I'd be curious to know which grant, there's very few that will cover vehicles, very few. And then usually that comes with a position. So like the governor's highway safety program, I can get 2 police officers this year with the vehicles, but the issue is it's the pays the whole price up front. Then the next year, the town takes over 50% of the salary. The next year, now you're paying 75% of the salary. And then after that, the town's paying the whole salary. And you have to guarantee to keep those positions for 5 years or whatever. And so something it's a good deal. I mean, if you're going to add 2 positions, it's a good deal. But if you're not planning to add those positions, it doesn't work out. That's what.
And then the other question, sorry, I have a lot of questions about this. Do we ever get used vehicles with like low mileage? Like, is that a thing that we can do? So that we're not,
We don't, and I've never heard of it.
We haven't we bought some used larger equipment in the past, the sweeper. and
more
backhoe.
public works than police.
okay.
One thing is, our vehicles are pursuit rated, so that it's not the same
Yeah,
car that you buy.
okay.
It's got a lot of modifications to make it safer.
What about the bikes? Will that take cars off the road? If you ask me
Yeah,
for?
some, yeah. The trick for us is if we're staffed, we can have people on bikes. If we're not staffed, people are. But our bikes that we have now, just real quick, they're really. Y'all might remember when they were bought those.
We use bikes more at like events, like
Yep.
bring them out and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So we don't have as cars idling
Right.
during events and
Yeah.
stuff.
you just can't get through, like if something's going on and there's a whole bunch of people, and you need to get from point A to point B fast. Then you can do it on the bike much better. Are you thinking e-bikes or just regular bikes?
No regular.
Good.
Can't afford it. Can't afford it.
Bad idea.
No, we can't have horses at any events, right? We can't like, we never have like the Christmas party, we can't have the Christmas
It needs
party.
a different insurance
Yeah,
policy
exactly.
for the parades. I mean, it's a whole other,
We have to buy a patrol car this year.
yes.
So next year, when we have to buy 2 cars, can we think about like weapons and about buying an EV, getting started in our rotation?
Yeah, just stay on top of it. It'll happen. Like all of a sudden it'll start to make
So
sense.
when we have to buy those 2 cars, are those gonna be patrol cars too, or those maintenance vehicles or?
Those one will be.
And what are we gonna buy this year? What kind of vehicle? It's like, are we getting another?
We're into whatever we can get, days of buying cars. and
Yeah,
Porsche.
The Explorer is the cheapest.
Yeah.
You can buy now. It's also maintenance wise working out. Seemingly,
Yeah.
who knows what this year will be.
For control.
To control, I saw these 2 extra ones.
Okay, so that concludes the budget.
That's really all I have about budget unless you all have other questions.
So they have to be American made cars or they can be, we can have. to be
Don't
others?
have to be, there are some departments few departments that use, the trick to that is, a quick example, I'm a Grand Cherokee guy, I love Grand Cherokee. I would love to say, I think they make the best patrol cars ever, I think. But they don't make the equipment to equip them for police vehicles. That's where you run into the problems in any kind of foreign made vehicle. They really only make them for the police cars you see. And so like, for example, the protective shield that's in there for the officers. Dodge 2021 is one thing. It feels intentional. 2022, it's a different product. You can't take the one out of the 21 and put it in the 22. It's almost like it's on purpose, but it's not interchangeable.
If I had my way, a whole bunch be driving Toyota Corollas.
The Priuses are used
Those are
in
little
some cities, so it's definitely possible.
Prius.
They're using the new.
NYPD has
Yeah.
has a Prius. If Curious who drives it, I bet it's not somebody that works.
They just pay.
I work.
Yeah, that's true.
Do you guys have to get consideration of getting up roads? We do.
Oh, yeah.
There's certain patrol vehicles.
We buy all-wheel drive
all-wheel
vans.
And the charge goes in
Which costs a lot more,
Mhm.
which we'd have to, but it's really.
The problem with the charges are when you're replacing bumpers and the
Ah.
underpins, because we have roads inside our town, you need full.
Yeah, even in town.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
And also the maintenance too. It's much easier for you all to work on one type of car versus like a bunch of different brands. You know, it's probably
Well,
easier to get parts.
Yeah, we inventory certain parts, filters, oil, bulbs,
Yeah.
that kind of thing, and it is easier, it's not like the Durangos use a different filter set than the Explorers and the Chargers. Just not having any more Chargers is gonna be huge.
Yeah.
For what we do and the parts that we keep in inventory, it hasn't been an issue yet. Uniformity in the fleet would be great, but we don't, when we come to buy these vehicles, if Explorers are cheaper that year or available.
Right.
When I was building this replacement schedule, right now, at the state bid price, Ford F-150s are cheaper than Durangos or Explorers, but you can't hardly find them. They're not available.
yeah, that's a whole other issue.
Mhm.
Patrol vehicles are, people who ordered, remember last year when the board approved us to buy 2 vehicles. If we were still waiting on those 2 vehicles from the factory, we wouldn't have them yet. That would be 1 year behind in our, we actually had to go buy those vehicles in another state just to get access to them. There's a huge shortage on them. So it's tricky to just find the ones you need. So,
Well, the Ford truck that y'all approved in the 2020 budget has been on the property for about a month and a half. Just can't,
And a lot of the bigger law enforcement agencies, some of the bigger ones put out, Indianapolis puts out one every year. They spend lots of money researching. If you're buying 1,000 patrol cars, they're gonna put a lot of time into finding out which one, how long is it gonna last, how's it gonna cost that, all that stuff. So we, as, we only have a few patrol cars, we can look to that research and see, it's same life for that vehicle, so. And the Explorers definitely winning the race in America right now. But that's the reason why you don't see like Toyotas, a lot of the other things. Pretty much when you see the bigger agencies doing that, they put a lot of money to figure out, is this the best? You're spending so much on. Yeah, but like for admin cars and stuff like that, you'll see Toyotas sometimes. That's probably the most popular one.
Okay, any more questions or comments on that?
I think we're good this year, but I mean, we're lucky.
Yeah.
With the ABC funds and then knowing that our tax base is shrinking and the cost of everything is going up. So especially with vehicles and looking at the equipment that Public Works needs in the next few years, we'll be talking about a tax increase soon. But I think the takeaway from this is anytime we add personnel, have a tax increase to accommodate for it.
But we're adding services too.
Yes.
This is the thing to keep in mind.
Anything else left on the budget agenda?
I don't have anything. I think we could go into the non-budget priorities.
You just close this and we motion this or?
We're in the same work session.
Yeah, okay, cool. Okay, so I guess I'll take the lead because this is my idea, the non-budget priority. So there's very few times when we're all together here like this, where we're just kind of sitting here and able to have kind of cross-table discussions. It's a lot of times when we're at the big desk there, it's regimented and a lot of times I want to bring something. I think we wind up talking to each other a lot outside of the time, but I thought it would be important for us to piggyback on a time when we're in a work session like this. So all of us can kind of talk about what we see for the town moving forward in the future. What our each priorities are, because we can't pay for everything we want to do, but we can also think about things we want to do. And I think it's important for, for public record, that the folks that we represent understand also what we want to do. I don't have a set agenda kind of thing, because it is the first idea to do this. And I wanted to kind of open it up for discussion too, if folks have ideas about what this might turn into. And it doesn't have to be a 4-hour ordeal either, but if there's something that's really burning and we all want to have it out, then we can as well. So for instance, I'll just start off, I think for me, this the vision for Sylva is, I love the way it's moving forward. And in the future, like I want to see the town become much more friendly to pedestrians and bicyclists, and making a place that we can be walking around town and connecting like the historic downtown to 107 once 107 gets redone. And I think that like what guides me is that kind of mindset. So some of the things that I'd like to see happen, and this is also part of this discussion too, is so the town staff knows like what we're all thinking, what's on our mind. But just to know, I'm going to keep asking for things to make it so like how can we go about it so people are able, there's safety in cycling, there's safety in walking. How do we connect like the 107 and redo area to downtown? These are types of things that I think I want to keep looking at. The construction, for one thing, is going to make a huge change. It's going to be a big pain once it's done. My vision afterwards is that's going to be an area of economic development. That's a lot of people are going to want to put their businesses up there because it's going to be kind of a clean slate in a lot of ways. So I was kind of thinking today, we might be able to go around and just kind of everybody just like share their vision of the town and what's important to them. So, Greg, you want to go ahead? Because I already know what you were thinking. No, I'm like, well, I don't know. You have any other thoughts, like, put you on the spot here?
I'm looking at
Yeah.
I thought we were talking about these things that were the dots or what?
No. This is non-budget, because the problem is like a lot of times we're tied to a budget. Like, okay, I want to do this, but like there's no money for it or whatever. So and so these are the like commissioners of the town, or we come together, or we're all like, we all want it. This is like what's really important to us. And it's because you're limited, like, okay, these are your dots, these are the ideas for the budget we want to spend money on, but there's lots of stuff we want to do for the town that isn't something the town is going to pay for, or is, a big picture vision type stuff. And so that's what this kind of non-budget priorities, like what's important to you for the town, like how do you see the town of Sylva?
Skate park,
Right.
murals, and all the things that we've been like pushing towards to make it a more and fun place to visit.
Yeah.
I feel like we're moving in a great direction in terms of what's on our mission statement towards all of these projects. I think the priorities on here, these are small dollars, but all of this stuff that we've been doing for a long time have been these small dollar things, and they're all sort of adding up to this big picture like Sylva is really cool. And I'm hoping that it all culminates in the Bridge Park expansion.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my vision.
Yeah, totally. I mean, that's one thing, that if there's something that comes up, now is the time when we're all here to kind of talk about it as well together, rather than, it's just one thing comes up and we'll have a certain thing we're talking about. And there's a little bit of discussion if it's an agenda item or whatever, but I just feel like that kind of limits us a little bit to talking, and that's why.
There's lots of things like, so you mentioned 107, the expansion and tying all this together, We had the discussion about like the streetlights, the betterments for the streetlights and the betterments for the bridges and things like that, like making those are aesthetic.
Mhm.
The crosswalks, would love to see crosswalks being more delineated. Proper signage.
Cool. Dave?
So one thing I would say, it's important, if you have a vision or a goal in mind of something you want the town to achieve or work on, that there's two main resources that you have to plan around. That's the financial resources for implementing whatever it is you want, and also the resources of time, the staff time to achieve those things. And it seems like, having been on the board for 2 terms, in order for a project to be successful, you really got to think about those 2 things ahead of time and have a good plan for them. So like when you talk about pedestrian safety and prioritizing, walkways, I mean, sidewalks are incredibly expensive, but if you try to think of something you can do to make a difference, like we know our pedestrian plan is 10 years old now, and it's probably eligible for a grant to have that redone. That can alleviate financial burden of getting a pedestrian plan. And then, you can try to apply for the grant too, to get that. I think Pinnacle Park Board, a lot of my vision has been focused around Pinnacle Park and Scotts Creek. And I think the Pinnacle Park Foundation is a big success story in that regards, because they've managed to achieve a whole lot for the town of Sylva without being a burden on staff and financial resources. So like the botanical survey is something we wanted for the park, and the Pinnacle Park Board, wrote the RFP, managed the whole process and got the botanical survey completed. Well, it's due this Friday. And then same thing with the master plan, which is shortly going to be signed. And having done that without, being a burden on staff to get that achieved, because on top of our vision goals, staff is tasked with running an entire town, which is an incredibly time consuming endeavor without taking into account our whims. But so, I mean, those are the recipes for success in those endeavors, I think, is good planning for financial and time resources.
Yeah, I think you need a champion, like as board members, you wind up being a champion of the cause. And, that's where like, for me, all the work really goes in. If I'm wanting to do something, I know I can't just be like, hey, town, do this. I know I have to do it and then do my best to present it to you all, to the staff, without draining all of your resources, to be like, hey, and then, checking in along the way. How can this happen? What are your thoughts on what's the best way to this is my goal. What can I do on my own to champion that and then bring it to them? Natalie?
I was just gonna say, I think when you originally started talking about having this conversation, I think we were talking about how sometimes we'll have ideas as board members and those things kind of get left to die off and don't get any time. And so I was thinking, I think this type of situation is great for us because we do all get to sit down and talk about it. But I think what we're going to find is as the year goes on, those things are going to happen again because we're not continuously sitting down and having these conversations. So my idea, what I would love to see is the board to be able to sit down and have even short work sessions where we can talk around a table and talk about those ideas and what we want to see, kind of like this. So that those ideas that we have or things that we envision don't just get lost, or we bring them up every 3 months and why haven't we talked about this yet, kind of thing. I don't know if that's something that's possible. I know maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
I know it requires more time on everyone's part, but maybe on days where we have shorter meetings, we could follow it by a work session or something. I don't know. Kind of flesh those things out a little more than we can when we're sitting up there. You toss out an idea and then everyone just kind of we just move on from it. And that's kind of where it's left.
Is that how the county works it? Every other meeting is a work session?
every other meeting is a work session, and that's how ours used to be, but they turned into just regular meetings. So that format stopped, but the county is more going through the agenda and getting into detail with it to me. That's what it seems like.
So could we format it to where one of our existing meetings is a work session and then the other is like our normal meetings? Like, is that something that?
Or tack it on, I mean, to something, if there's something to talk about, for sure, like, I don't know.
I mean, what is the goal here? I mean, talking is fun, but like, I feel like the way we do is we set our priorities for the year during our budget session talks, because I mean, priorities are budget related, and bringing things up in the middle of the year is a really difficult time to make something a priority, right? Like there's a cycle to how we achieve things and set goals here, and for things to be done efficiently and effectively, I feel like that is the best method. I wouldn't say the county's work sessions are just like sitting around brainstorming. It's more like they have an issue that comes up that's a discussion session on it, and then the next meeting is the take action on it. And that's how we divide up on FOSSA is this discussion action. So you're not taking action on something the first time it's brought up. I like our yearly work plan meeting. I think that's very effective, where we once a year, you have time to gather your thoughts, you know what's coming, you plan for what you want, what priorities you want to bring to the table. That all gets given to staff. Staff can make a plan like we did the last one. We had a timeline worked out, right, for what we wanted to achieve and when we wanted to achieve it by. Like, to me, that's the most effective way to plan for your goals, is to do it at one time and develop a cohesive plan for it. I know things come up during the year to discuss. I feel like the commissioner's report is a good place to bring that up to see if it's worthy of, getting added on the agenda. But from an efficiency standpoint, I like the once a year goal setting.
And like, I totally get that. I just think, and we talked about this recently, how things get brought up in commissioner reports. And then again, everyone just we look at each other, and then I don't think we mean for that to be the end of the conversation, but a lot of times that is the end of the conversation. Things do come up and get dropped. I don't know if that's something that we can maybe fix. Like with Ben asking to go to the conference today, we took care of that conversation right then. And oftentimes we don't take care of the conversation right then.
Right.
Maybe we could lean more into taking care of like having that discussion, and then we wouldn't need to really talk outside of.
Yeah, I think the system, Paige and I were discussing this the other day. We do need a system in place for handling a commissioner request and getting on the agenda. I think the best way is for the mayor to take note in the commissioner's report of, something a commissioner brings up, and then, poll the board to determine if that's something the rest of the board supports and put it on the agenda. For the next meeting or whenever staff finds that, it appropriate to be put on the agenda. So I'll be glad to take that on and make sure those things don't fall off the drawing board. Because I agree. I think we do tend to drop those things when they come up in mid-year meetings. And I think we can address that.
And could we have a work session if like there was something burning, we're like, hey, can we just schedule a work session?
Well, and I think we've done that as needed. I mean.
Yeah, as needed.
The past few years, we've done the ARPA one, we've done one for Allen Street. We're gonna need one for Bryson Park soon. I think it just depends on it really depends on the topics and where we are in the process of where the other projects are, in my opinion.
Right. Well, if you don't want things to fall by the wayside, you prioritize those things into the budget, that budget time. That's how things get perpetuated. Example, Bridge Park springs immediately to mind. It wasn't funded, but it was a continued priority for the board, this one and previous. So now that the funding's there, I mean, in my mind, that's the way things get accomplished.
And they do, and I think those are definitely like, and I don't think we should change our budget thing for sure, but it's just, again, this is this is like a new idea, and so there's no set format, but we don't have these, other than this budget stuff, the work session, we don't have this, what we're having right now, this discussion, around, and that's kind of what I wanted to have, whether or not it is like, and as I say, any idea that we bring to the town is a priority, so it doesn't necessarily have to have a format. I just thought like this would be a good time just to over here and throw it out. Yeah, retreat was great too.
Yeah, I think what you're missing is the board.
Yeah.
Because we haven't had it.
Why don't you just, or when you're having a work session, you could develop with somewhat of a process to consider if maybe there are other topics that could be addressed or discussed at that work session. Kind of like valuable time that you're already getting people together.
Yeah,
I mean, that could get out of hand, I guess, if everybody had 12 ideas, but I mean, this does seem like very valuable time with everybody sitting at the table. It's kind of rare.
It is,
Why not
yeah.
consider if there was something else today that could have been, take advantage of the time that we're here. Not trying to keep everybody here all afternoon, but we're here.
exactly.
And it doesn't seem all that common that we're all here, not sitting there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
maybe you could poll people coming into any work session. Somebody could, the mayor or someone, a few weeks before saying, hey, we're having a work session, just a reminder, if you have something else that you'd like to discuss with the group, this might be a good opportunity.
But we wouldn't call it a work session unless it's.
yeah.
I'm just saying we already having.
We have a number of years. I mean, we should be doing our board retreat yearly, and then we have a number of these work sessions, budget work sessions. And I think the yearly retreat is a really good opportunity to do that.
Annually or every 2 years. I mean, there's a lot that comes out of that. I mean, thinking about ours last year, it's a day long. If people get a week's vacation a year,
Mhm.
they're giving up a day, like the board is giving up a day of their vacation to do that. They're expensive. I don't feel like, well, in my opinion, I don't think staff has had a chance to touch that list because the other services and priorities have taken over what was discussed at that retreat. I mean, we added a fire department. We're about to scratch the surface on Allen Street. I don't want what the board wants to fall to the wayside, but we're implementing from the staff side, the priorities are set in the budget and the services we're providing, and then the projects that we're already committed to.
I think y'all are following that work session plan pretty well. So I see our budget work session as our planning for the year, like the upcoming year. And I see the board retreat as our, this is us revisiting our 5-10-year plan. Right, that's not our like course of action for the next year, although it includes action items for that year. But like, I feel like that timeline that we laid out, staff is following that. I mean, Bridge Park was a big thing on there that's moving forward, and that Allen Street landslide. I think you're right. I think maybe every 2 years, because that meeting should be the long-term plan for the town of Sylva, and the yearly budget meetings are the 1-year plans. Yeah, so I think, 2-year cycle on those is good. The year after an election, it'd be the year after.
And I would encourage you not to get so wrapped up in your big ideas, your hopes and dreams. But well, don't forget about the services that every day. Trash, recycling, tax collection, police, fire. I mean, that's every single day on top of, and that's not nothing. I mean, people in town get something for their tax dollar.
Right. So I'd say we schedule our next one for 24. Right after this election cycle in 2 years.
A retreat, even in 2 weeks, 2 years.
I saw someone raise their hand.
It was me. I was gonna say like I know it seems like this is just like, it's great to talk and that sort of thing, but I do think we get a lot out of sitting around a table together versus when we're sitting up there. And a lot of like boards and groups that I've been on, like this is every meeting, you're sitting around talking, and that's how decisions are made and plans are made, that sort of thing. And like I said, like, I really think that's one of the things that we miss out on a lot, is being able to sit around and I mean, we just talked about, like, that was something that just came out of us talking, was like deciding to do the board retreat every other year versus every year. Like, I think there are things that can come out of it that are beneficial to us all as a board. I mean, I don't think necessarily we need to have a work session like every month. And we do have work sessions and conversation. I do think it's important for us to be able to sit down without the structure of sitting behind the mics.
And a lot of that is just how meetings are laid out for government, for governmental bodies.
Yeah.
I think that's the constraints of what you guys are feeling
Yeah.
here. I'll try to look into other ways we can deal with that.
Yeah.
What, I just am curious, in a TWASA meeting, do you dine every meal or not? Do you have a meal
Well,
together?
that'd be nice. If they did. This is the yearly retreat. Yeah.
Well, I'm just wondering, like, is there like a time like before the meeting where you have like snacks and sit around? I know you have to advertise, but like unofficial, official.
Thinking typically in those sort of roles, discussion before and after meetings are discouraged, right? Because they're not the open meetings.
Exactly.
Like, and that's partly why our meetings are structured as they are. It's really, it's not a time, it's like, we're a decision-making board, right? Not a discussion board, really. We discuss the decisions we make before we make them, but
I mean, I may be totally crazy, but I thought that there was a time like that, maybe before you served on TWASA's board,
maybe.
where
before.
that did take place.
No,
that you were
they-
gathered
I'd
around.
say that probably shouldn't take place.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, you've got 3 of you in a room, it's an official meeting.
Yeah.
And right, and that is like one of these things, like there are only talk to one person at a time, and it's like a little mad. Yeah, like, okay, I'm gonna call this person, I'm gonna call this, like, it's having everybody here together is nice, it's a nice thing.
This is still an official meeting. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, this is still
Yeah.
a meeting. It's just in a little bit of a different format that I think works better for us being able to discuss things.
But we are allowed to send an email to everyone. We're just not allowed to reply.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I
right.
mean, you shouldn't have really any discussion outside of the meeting.
I guess I'm just thinking if Ben has like some random idea that he's dying to get to us, couldn't he still just?
It should be in a
not.
It should be in a meeting,
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think a lot of what discussions we're having here is what we have in our annual or our biannual every 2-year retreat.
Cody and faced each other, would you feel better about it?
Yes,
I was gonna say, but my
I like-
that is,
yeah.
I do this.
it's really.
No,
We'll talk to you about the paint color one too.
You're along the sideline. Well, yeah, no, you can't see people up there, it's like you're kind of leaning back over, I'm just that side of.
Yeah, but I mean, it's a decision-making body, right? Like we set the zoning regulations and budget requirements. I mean, that's our main function, is to present to the public.
It's true, yeah, but at the same time, it'd be nice to see. But we're not gonna build anything, but if this thing, when it is due to get replaced, if ever.
It's not currently on any of our schedules.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think the resolution of this is that we'll keep to our 2-year board work session or board retreat for discussing ideas. And then we also have our yearly budget work sessions.
And when you want to have something on an agenda for a discussion, take
Yeah.
advantage of that time.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't always have to be an action.
Yeah,
Right, and you can request that to the mayor or the manager to have something on the agenda. We'll bring it up in the commission's report, and I'll do a better job of making sure that someone brings something up in the commissioner report that we address whether or not it is worthy of an agenda item by polling board.
yeah.
Should we ask during the commissioner's report, like, hey, can we put this on the agenda? Like, is that probably the best way to go?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just bring it up, I'll jot it down. We'll make sure.
We'll work on that process.
But in the future, I think like it is something to keep in mind. I don't think this is a bad thing to have as an option to tack on. Like, I mean, I just picked something called, non-budget priorities, whatever, but it could be just like open forum. It could be just discussion. But it is important, I think, for all of us to be in here. It's, there's a balance between efficiency and actually kind of, ruminating, if you will.
Probably the reason those discussions happen at budget time is because the budget depends, well, whether it does or doesn't happen depends on the budget, you know, so.
Yeah.
As the budget drives, you should be able to look at this budget and see the goals and objectives of the town. And, you know, if money grew on trees, that would look a lot different.
Totally. Yeah, exactly.
But really, if you have an idea, it should be part of the yearly budget planning cycle.
I was gonna make that comment. It's fun to say non-budget priorities, but there really aren't any.
Yeah.
That's almost everything that's out of the budget.
Yeah, I mean, you
It's
still have to
just-
attend the stop time and stuff.
Yeah, you're really just talking about
Right.
discussion items, not non-budget priorities.
Yeah.
Because if you're gonna prioritize, you almost always have to put money.
Yeah, but something, again, my goal for this was to have a point where everybody's around this table and we're able to kind of have an open forum. To some degree, and I think we talked about a few things. You know, it's like, it's the first time through, you know, there's nothing that says it can't be something else, but the important thing is to be around, because we're all good folks here, we all have great ideas. And it's, I think a lot of times you can get something to come out of a discussion with a bunch of folks that one person missed or whatever. So, you know, the alchemy here, if you will.
Okay, anything else? Anything from staff that wants to be
Please
discussed?
make a plate before you go, take with you or eat here.
Anybody hungry? All right, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll motion we adjourn.
Anything else from anybody? All those in favor?
Oh, Larry and Brad didn't get to do their hokey drink.
If you guys, right. You guys have anything you want to
I
add
have a
in?
couple things.
Yeah.
I got my call hopes.
We are not adjourned then.
Yeah.
Good.
Hold off on that. motion.
Hold on there, thank you.
Hold off on that.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
I think it was your turn.
Yeah, thanks.
Well, I've enjoyed serving on the board and I've noticed that the government takes time. And we have a lot of really great ideas that have cycled through in the time that I've been on this board that I'm only now maybe seeing to fruition. So it just takes time
It
and
does.
patience, right?
Yeah.
The Skyland sidewalk is like one of my big things that I really wanted when I first got on this board, and it's been a long time, but it's coming. So I just encourage you.
Yeah.
Get your
Uh,
work done.
The only thing that came to mind, or a couple things, sidewalks. I know they're expensive, but they are a memorable experience in any town that you visit. You can go to some towns and like, you know, I remember the sidewalks in certain towns. We have a lot of busted sidewalks in Sylva, things that need to be addressed. I have no idea how much that's been discussed, and y'all could be looking at me like sidewalk guys here again, but it is an issue. It's a safety issue in some cases, but it's also very much part of your memory of a town that you visit is. And then the other one is sidewalks. And then the other one would be lighting. We have done a great job of the way the lighting's improved as far as public lighting. But there are definitely issues with private businesses and awnings and their lighting and or there's broken windows on Back Street right now, which was the norm 20 years ago. But shouldn't be now. And I don't know exactly what ordinances we have in place to hold private businesses accountable to some standards, but without that, it's not gonna happen. I could probably walk around and show you 3 awnings right now that are hanging on by a thread or have a different business name on them and is actually there. And or, I mean, there was even a ribbon cutting taken with you guys a few months ago with a business. It was funny because the awning in the background wasn't their name. I just got a kick out of that. Like, and it was new, so I understand that. But in my head, I was like, it might say that 10 years from now. And you notice that stuff when you're walking around a town. And I would just say, like, looking at neighboring communities, if you just got dropped out of space and took a walk through downtown Waynesville versus downtown Sylva, that would be 2 things you would definitely notice immediately. Would be their sidewalks, awnings, private business upkeep versus ours. I'm not saying we need to go gung ho on anything. I'm just, for me, it's noticeable. Walk around downtown. So that's something that I think we could, it's kind of on my list of things to hopefully try to do something about over the next few years to get private businesses and building owners. In some cases, it's not even private businesses so much as it is the owners of the buildings. I don't even know if they're being asked to do much about it. Like, I don't know who would ask them or what the ask would be, but
So it's a really a Main Street priority to work with property owners to try to get the buildings approved. You know, they've all got different stories as to why they don't, but we've had several inquiries about facade improvements, including awnings. It typically is a matching grant process. So I did apply for one with Duke Energy that we were declined to try to get some funds so that we could do a matching program where the property owner would do half and grant. So that's still kind of a priority, and it's typically been the better approach for facade improvements than ordinances and Main Street programs.
Well, yeah, nobody wants to be told what to do. That's
Right.
the way the world.
But I totally agree with you. It just breaks my heart when I walk down the street and like Mary said, we just gotta keep pressing on and having those goals. And I will say in the last 10 years of being involved in the Main Street program as a volunteer, we've seen more owner occupied buildings than we have in the past, which has been contributed a big part to the improvement because they have that vested interest instead of a property owner who's inherited their property and doesn't really live here anymore.
Yeah, you know, that's so then little pieces make a huge difference. That sidewalk right next to Ilva there that we did, the town did that one. And that was a huge thing. It used to be like walking down the sidewalk and you'd be on the road. And now there's this like it's a small thing, but it like every time I walk down there, it's like it feels so much safer.
I agree.
It's a big deal. And same thing on the other sides on Mill. So yeah.
I just comment as a business owner in Sylva, I'm for holding them responsible for their.
Yeah.
I mean, I hear you on the, you know, the grant process, but ultimately. They've got to be the bare minimum that we expect. And as a building owner, you've got. In downtown, at least, you've got to adhere to that. I mean, I don't know. It's cool to be nice, but I don't know that you'll ever get there with saying, hey, the way this will be addressed is we'll go try to get a grant for you.
Yeah, well, and
I
especially.
like it. It's nice. It's a nice outreach, but ultimately you've got to be able to say, this is what we require at a minimum. You can't have broken windows for this long. Your awning can't be falling off for this long. That's my feeling.
Also, isn't signage kind of covered in the county or what John Jaleski does?
Yes, our sign ordinances is in part of our zoning ordinance. I need to look to see about outdated.
Yeah.
I don't think it's addressed. I think it gets addressed in the beginning as far as how much you can have, what type and things like that. But then if it's falling off the side of the building 5 years later, I don't know that we got any teeth there.
But there are some upkeep requirements in there at the sign.
Okay,
Yes.
good.
Yeah, I'm talking outdated wording.
Yeah. So if you come across
Oh,
something
okay.
that you think is a safety issue too, you know. you
Yes,
can always,
bring that to my
bring it to
Yeah.
attention and Paige can be in touch with the county. That.
So, so at you said you went somewhere with Lori to talk about historic downtown. What was that like?
So that's really for big buildings that are can take advantage of the historic preservation tax credit, which we're working on with the South Press building. It's a possibility to get that, help them get that funded.
Mhm.
But it's a long-term commitment to be able to do it because you get it. So that was really good, and everything else more facade improvements was focused on grant funding. Sometimes the North Carolina Main Street program has some revitalization funds that we can tap into.
Right.
Hoping,
Back,
yeah,
county used to do a facade grant also. That's no longer the case. So,
The two of the grants that we would have utilized for the kind of things that we're talking about are
right.
finished.
Quick question, what's the timeline, like, what's our restriping timeline on like parking spaces and parking lots in Sylva?
Jake, do you want to address that?
As needed. We're gonna be picking back up this spring. The weather
Yeah.
pavement has to be 40 degrees and rising for that paint to stick down. We got about half of downtown done last year. We'll get the other half done this year. The paint in the SunTrust lot is relatively new. It's about a year and a half old. We do need to redo the ridge lots. That's coming.
Is there anything that can be done about Mill Street parking spaces being so narrow?
We've talked about that quite a bit in the past. Until there's a resurfacing on Mill Street, I think we're spinning our wheels with that. I agree, those spaces need to be wider. When they were painted the way they are, and loading zones need to be changed around too. So we need to look at the whole Mill Street corridor at the same time when we do that. And what you run into is you painting over old lines, or if you mill those lines up, you can still see them. So it's really, when you've got as much needing to go on as needs to happen in Mill Street, you kind of do it on fresh pavement all at one time.
And is there anything that can be done about like Rick's lot?
Match repairs, yes.
Well, I know that's on the plan, that's on the list of things that y'all are doing.
Yeah, still, I haven't had time to look into the Bradford Pear bounty. There is one particular problem tree there now that's choking out a tree that was a donation that we used on the Tree City application. It's gonna come out pretty much forthwith and be replaced with dogwood. Dogwood's right there on our logo. I don't think anybody had any trouble with that. The policy up until now is if we remove a tree, we replace it with a tree. We talked about this a little bit at the last budget session. I'm not against just taking the Bradfords out wholesale because they're Bradfords and nobody likes them. They're invasive. You guys passed your invasive ordinance. If we go back in with new trees there, we'll need a budget for that.
And Adam Bigelow said he would be more than happy to help with that as well.
You're talking about the striping of the lines.
Well, it seems like over time with that bank back there, as well as like Leaf Shed and the Bradford Pears, that it's kind of a tight parking lot anyway. And it seems like as more of that happens, and I don't know if the bank maybe has something to do with that as well, but it kind of narrows the parking lot a little bit. And people don't park as close to the bank, and then there's not as much room to drive through. I don't know if there's any way that.
Yeah, those Bradfords got big and really canopied out. That makes it kind of like a cave. And we all know what Bradfords do when they get big, they start to split. My concern is that a limb's gonna come off and hit a tree or a person.
Yeah, which we did have that one limb that came off in a parking space, but there wasn't a car there luckily, so.
And they stink.
And the like flowers that come off of them, like I said, they kind of, it's almost like litter. It's like, makes it a real
It
mess.
will clog a sweeper.
So when you have time, why don't you look at what it would cost to replace those? And if, depending on what your workload is like, as soon as you have chance, we can put that before the board and just appropriate the money to take care of that and replace the trees at once.
Do they have to be replaced in the same place though?
It's our parking lot. We do.
Spread, well, you have, if we take a tree out, we have to replace it.
We don't necessarily have to. That's just been policy. Because removing trees, whether they're Bradfords or otherwise, is generally negative
Yeah,
for a tree city.
I just think like that parking lot in particular is a really unique spot. It's
Could it be
got,
bushes instead of trees, maybe
As long as they're natives.
native bushes, so that they're not so many leaves coming off and so much, like I just feel like leaves and flowers cause a problem over time.
I think it's gonna call for a longer term plan because
Yeah.
the concrete there, or the asphalt is buckling in the very corner where the cherry tree is.
Mm-hmm.
The concrete goes like this.
Yeah, because of the roots on that cherry.
Right. So like, I think it's a bigger discussion, but what I was getting at is like, the back of that lot is covered in brambles and stuff. If you clear it off and you have a rock face there. So my design idea, again, aesthetics of the town. Do you guys remember we were at that we had somebody come and they gave a presentation on aesthetics? It was when I first got on the board, and she's like, find your waterfall in town. it spurred all this economic development, and I see that back of that lot as something like that, as a rock face that is like a feature in town. So get rid of the Bradford pears, plant the dogwoods.
But let me make a plan first, because we'll need more direction on that.
Yeah, but I think it's worth exploring that, just that little pocket of town. It's hard. That's a bigger thing.
And I just happened to see that they ran out of money.
Of course they did.
For the bounty. But it's
How much
okay.
was it?
I don't know.
It was very.
It was very low. I think they would just give you a tree.
I saw South Carolina they're phasing them out of nurseries into year,
Mhm.
within a year.
Yeah. They're definitely on the radar, so that's good. All right. Anything else from anybody? Yeah, sorry about it, like, I didn't mean to cut you guys out. I thought it just kind of petered out, but yeah. All right, I will, motion, remotion for adjournment. All right, all those in favor?